What is up, everybody? No, it's not Harry. No, it's not. One half of Generation Orange here tonight. Definitely live for sure. My chair legit folded in half on me, and it was a good chair. It was a very good chair. It was a gamer style chair. It was very comfortable. And so pay your respects in chat with a nice F in chat. Pay your respects. No, seriously though. Welcome everybody. Mark, what the hell? How you gonna be in chat but not actually join the show? No, Mark's busy. I'm guessing. I'm hoping. Uh, and apparently I'm not. I have no life. Hashtag COVID 2021. But in all seriousness, tonight we're going to talk about MLS Super Draft that happened after the show last week on Wednesday. They had the draft on Thursday, and it definitely put a smile on my face that the exact scenarios that we discussed on the show essentially happened. Um, and it was pretty awesome to watch, to kind of see it, not see it, but to kind of follow along as it happened. For those that don't know, Thursday last week was our big for work, one of our big annual events that we have, and so my attention was fully on that. Had my phone out occasionally when I was not being watched, and admittedly tuned in where I could, as I could, even if it was via Discord, following people sharing what picks were being made. And it was pretty cool to kind of sit there and watch as rumors of Dynamo trading right before the draft, going down to the number 8 pick, and then or number 6 pick, sorry, the number 6 pick. And then turning around and still getting the guy that they wanted, and ultimately using that money that they acquired in moving down to get a player that they wanted from another club. Really impressive stuff. Really well done by both Tab and Matt Jordan. And look, I got a lot of flack last week. Not gonna lie, a whole lot of flack last week um, for basically throwing my hat a little bit behind Matt Jordan. And saying, if this is what Matt Jordan is now, as soon as I said Matt Jordan, we lost somebody. It must have been Mark. But in saying, if this is the Matt Jordan that we get and we have him for a year, not only can I tolerate that, but I'm starting to see where Matt can really be a decent GM linked with a coach like Tab that is able to dictate exactly who he wants, where and how who he wants, and kind of the value he associates with that player. And I'll be honest, I don't think other coaches that have been here under the Matt Jordan tenure have had that capability. Owen Coyle was not that kind of coach. He has always kind of had somebody to handle, selecting the personnel for him everywhere he's gone. And then, following him, Wilmer Cabrera. That's not his style. He may pick his players, but he doesn't really, totally honest, he really has no idea as to the value of players. And then he's just not a player's coach as much as people, prodded or put out there that he was. It has become very clear he was not. Players across the league consistently said that they would not want to play for him if given the chance. They would play for any other coach but him. He was basically the most hated coach in MLS. But with all that said, welcome to the show. It is extremely unique to be streaming by myself. Essentially, I say by myself, but I always have Nest kind of at an arm's reach, I suppose. But the only audio I get to hear this week is my own voice. The sultry sounds of Sean in the late evening. They make it very difficult to go a full hour, not gonna lie. The more you guys interact in chat, the quicker this will go for me, the less painful this will be, and the sooner I can go and turn on some wrestling. I'm gonna go watch me some AEW once this show's over. So if anybody follows AEW, hit me up. Let me know. Love that freaking promotion. So let's see. Mark didn't do a poll this week. Slacker number 1. Fail on Mark. Epic fail on Mark, actually, because I tout that he's always going to have a poll and then failed me. No, I'm just kidding. Mark's been busy. He's got a lot of stuff going on. And in tribute to Mark, even though it's not properly branded, I am drinking tonight, mostly for my back's benefit. But this is it's a fruity hazy haze juice from Eureka Heights. Um, oh Harry, I could. Oh boy, you and me. I let me phrase it this way for you, Harry. You are definitely a San Antonio guy. And I'm mic drop. Just leave it at that. So Mark says Wilmer's a winner. So I'm gonna counter that argument. Wilmer is kind of like Owen Coyle at this point, with the exception of Wilmer actually had some success when he was here. And to be fair, I think that was because we gave him the extra year, or extra couple of years. Whereas I think with Coyle was just kind of done and didn't want to see things progress any further than it did. Uh, yeah, it's U.S. Open Cup, not Canadian. Oh well, I guess he did win the Canadian Championship when he was with Montreal, but let's be real, it's like a competition of four teams. I mean, that's the equivalent of. I mean, technically, he won what is it? He won El Capitan one year when he was down here. And the rumor and the reason why Wilmer's being brought up, and the reason I brought it up to begin with, is the rumor of Wilmer being one of the final candidates for the RGV Toros job, head coach job. Now that they've let Gerson Echeverry leave, which makes me laugh because and I follow some RGV folks, and there's a number of them that are concerned that his name is being touted out there as a possible hire for RGV. RGV has claimed their independence from the Dynamo, and for all the talk about that, it's interesting to me to watch the change in attitude very quickly of certain individuals. Of we've got to have independence, we've got to have it now. It's clear Dynamo are holding us back. To now you're starting to see some people going, oh shit, maybe this is actually the club we really have. And I said it last week, and I'm not trying to deter any RGV fans that are watching or that may have been watching that just left because I basically blasted RGV. But I said it in tweets, and I said, and this was 3 or 4 weeks ago. I said, be very careful what you wish for. And I've said it before to RGV fans. I said, be very careful what you wish for when it comes to independence. And it has nothing to do with Cantu. It has nothing to do with the organization down there. The front office. Ron Patel is a incredibly smart and intelligent individual. But I think you have to keep in mind, Cantu's not a soccer guy. He's not a soccer businessman. He's very much the USL's version of Gabriel Brenner. Um, and that's going to sting some RGV people to hear, but that's the truth. Um, and I continue to wait. I hope I'm proven wrong, but so far the crickets coming out of RGV, the fan discontent at the lack of any movement on a head coach, um, is it it makes me just take a step back again and say, careful what you wish for. And I tell that to everybody, careful what you wish for. We I think as fans have a tendency to view when we are supporting a struggling team, we tend to view any option other than what we have as a vertical movement up. And the reality is, it may not be a vertical move up. It may just be a lateral move to a different side. Um, what's up, parts unknown? Uh, yeah, I mean, the statements being said, they're true. They're not wrong. He's the greatest coach in RGV history. Yeah, Wilmer is absolutely. They've had two head coaches try again. Um, Harry says, I think you're going to be on the wrong side of this one. I think RGV is going to do okay. Thank you, Harry, for being that counterpoint to me, since Mark's not here this week to be that counter guy. I counter with da 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 da. I appreciate that, devil's advocate, or if you genuinely believe that, probably should be drinking less beer than me. Um, no kidding. Come on, Harry. Hmm. By the way, this is a very good beer. It's a very good beer. Highly recommend it. Picked up a 6 pack on Friday, or actually Saturday. Um, but yeah, so let's focus on Wilmer for a second. Let's talk about Wilmer. Wilmer just he went to Montreal Impact. He couldn't survive there. He ended up going to Barcelona Academy, couldn't survive there. And now he's being rumored and linked with a head coaching gig with the USL Championship team. Um, it just feels to me when it comes to Wilmer Cabrera that this is a coach that is on a downward trend. And I am curious to see, is Wilmer Cabrera's ceiling now considered USL Championship? Is he no longer a MLS capable coach? Um, there were coaches out there. He probably wasn't supposed to be a long-term option there, and Thierry Henry was definitely the right choice for them to go with. Don't get me wrong, light years ahead of what Wilmer was. But I look at the situation in RGV, and you had an opportunity to land a coach, such as the coach out of, was it Reno, Harry? The coach out of Reno, a fantastic coach, a coach that proved to you that he's more than capable of taking a team and building something very lasting, and something that fans can be extremely proud of. And you basically whiffed because you were Russell, Ian Russell. You basically whiffed on Ian Russell. You basically have. Oh, of course, yeah. You've whiffed on. There have been two or three other top coaches in USL USL Championship that you've missed out on. And somebody on Twitter, and I'm not going to name who it is, but you all know who it is from RGV specifically, tweeted at me and said they were told that the reason that the reason a coach hadn't been announced yet is because the organization couldn't move forward until the dotted line was signed by the Dynamo. Here's the problem with that. This is the soccer, global soccer in a nutshell. There have been articles that have come out on The Athletic. If you don't subscribe to The Athletic, make sure you do. That's my plug for The Athletic. I love Stam Stechko, and all the other guys that write over there are just amazing. And it's become an absolute prime subscription opportunity to follow for any sports news, let alone MLS or let alone global soccer. But they've posted articles recently, in particular, about how the transfer market works and how transfers actually work in the global market. And it's interesting to see that even though there are regulations and restrictions in place, within the Premier League, for instance, teams still are not supposed to reach out to the player first or reach out to the player's agent first. They're supposed to reach out to the other team and get approval from that team and work out the transfer details from that team before they approach the player and his agent. That doesn't happen, though. It does on very rare occasions when there's already a known relationship or a known rapport. But most of the time, they reach out directly to the player's agent, or they reach out to somebody that knows the agent. Perhaps a good example of that would be a team, a Dynamo player here that has an agent that has a few clients overseas. It's the equivalent of the Dynamo saying to that player, "Hey, can you talk to your agent and see if so and so might be interested in coming over here next year?" Type of thing. It's because they don't have core values like Matt Jordan. I'm not even gonna go there, Mark. I'm not even gonna grant that a retort because it is so silly. But overseas, and again, this is true across the global market. But teams reach out directly to the agents usually, or through other forms to get to the agents. They don't even reach out to the team, and that's important because in this situation, RGV they've known for. Look, I'll put it out there. They've known for probably about a year, or at least 6 months. They've known for a while the Dynamo we're gonna pull out of this and say, hey, we're not in a position where we're totally happy with how this is going. We know you guys are in the same situation, so we'd like to just kind of nix this while we can and move on. That is, oh boy, that is such a loaded question. From Parts Unknown, question was a worse situation in finding a head coach right now or manager, RGVFC or the Texans. I will answer that question here in just a second. But RGV knew this was coming. It wasn't like this was something that broadsided them. What? The Dynamo want to break this relationship, and they're backing out of this agreement that we've had in place. Look, the Dynamo, if you had started talking to a coach, a month in advance or when the season and USL championship ended, the Dynamo weren't going to fault you for that. They weren't going to rip you a new one for that. It's Eric Bieniemy to coach RGV. Yeah, there you go. Still would be a better hire than Wilmer Cabrera, in my opinion. At least he could get players to actually play right on the pitch. I struggle to believe what they've put out there from RGV, that they couldn't start the process until the Dynamo signed the dotted line. I don't think that's true at all. I don't. There's no reason to believe that. I think honestly, you had the holidays, you had COVID going on, you have a lot of remote work going on. They've got a smaller staff right now than they did before COVID. And the season, it was the off season, so things move a lot slower in the off season. Hey, there is no reason for RGV's front office to sugarcoat that they were delayed because of things that trying to throw the Dynamo under the bus on that one, to me, is such a horrible cop out. And it is completely what I expect at this point from an organization like RGV. And again, I hope RGV are successful. I hope they prove me wrong. But right now, they are proving me absolutely 100% right. And and I don't want to call out specific people, but if you're going to sit there and tell me that you're on board with the change and then a week later you're putting it out there that you're kind of starting to get skeptical, and then another week later that you're starting to get worried, hey, guess what? I called it out 3-4 weeks ago. I called this out when they announced this was going to happen. I was willing to put it out there, and I got ripped a new one by a few people for saying it. Like, hey, Harry's a good example. Hey, this is exactly what RGV need. Sure it is. If RGV were an organization capable of taking matters into their own hands. But what we're seeing is an organization that has learned how to operate from an organization that doesn't know how to operate. Right? Everybody knows the Dynamo has struggled the last how many years? Where have RGV learned how to operate? The Dynamo. They didn't come in with their own understanding of how to operate within USL Championship. If they did, why'd they sign the agreement to begin with? And Ron Patel, great hire. However, look at how he's operating right now. Continues to use the Dynamo as a crutch, saying this is the reason we struggle. This is the reason we can't do XYZ. This is the reason we're so slow in getting this handled. Fact is, I don't think Cantu has as much money available as people think. I don't think they've offered nearly as much as other teams are willing to offer to a head coach right now. And I think they're willing to wait, from an RGV perspective, they're willing to wait until closer to the season because they know they can get a coach cheaper that way. And that's great from a business perspective. From a sports business perspective, that is dumb. That is the worst, absolute worst thing you can do. Because what happens? Now your coach is scrambling to try to sign players. You're going to end up with the first half of the season being a complete wash. They have how many players signed to their roster right now? 6, 7, maybe, if they're lucky, 7. I get that, Harry, and Harry says I'd rather have RGV get it right if it takes a week or two longer. That's fine, but that's not how a championship organization works. They don't spend 8 weeks trying to find a freaking coach. They have a coach already in mind. Look, RGV should have had their list of coaches narrowed down before that. They should have scheduled interviews for as soon as the Dynamo signed the dotted line. They should have been moving the progress line along. Instead, they're dragging their feet. Again, I think it comes down to RGV don't have as much money to put out there for a higher level coach, and they're going to have to settle for whatever they can get. And I hope that they're getting some kind of discount with Wilmer, because if Wilmer's your best coach that you can put forward, I'm sorry, RGV fans, but you are in for a world of hurt this coming season. It is not going to be a great season in RGV. And Wilmer will not have the same resources he had with the Dynamo, where he was able to bring in Dynamo players or have Dynamo players handed to him. I'm a little animated today. I am, Pat, and it's not the Dynamo's fault, oddly enough. You're not wrong, Harry, but again, that's another reason they needed to be ahead of the curve instead of behind it, right? Harry says, I agree, it's taking longer than anticipated, but let's also be honest. RGV is not exactly a prime location. That's why you have to be on the ball. That's why you have to be the organization that is out there saying, hey, do we have a chance? Hey, are you interested whatsoever? Hey, we've got an opportunity. We're working on this kind of change and shift in how we operate. Here's your chance to, it's all in how you market the opportunity. I guarantee you there were coaches available that would have taken that opportunity if they had been sooner to the punch. There are coaches that would have loved that opportunity if they were quicker to the punch. They were just too slow about it. They were willing to drag their feet because they felt that was the best approach. It was good to be slow so they could find the right guy. That's what you're saying. There's nothing wrong with that approach, except in this situation where let's say they do hire Wilmer Cabrera. If he tanks and he's an absolute crapshoot in this first season, are fans going to stick around? They're already not happy with this organization. Yeah, they're not bringing in Frank Lampard. They can't afford Frank Lampard. Um, but are fans going to stick around? Look, it's a worse situation in RGV from a fan perspective than it is in with the Dynamo. The Dynamo have made moves. Look, everybody hated on the rebrand, but it was good that they did it before, kind of at the very end of last season, because it gave time for it to kind of settle in. They've also now made a bunch of moves that actually are getting attention in a very positive way. They've been very proactive this offseason. You're not wrong, Harry, but this is not going to help. It's continuing to not help. It's going to continue to make the first part of that season a struggle. And look, if I'm a player, if I'm a high talent player in the USL Championship that thinks I have a chance at MLS, am I going to go to RGV right now? They don't have a coach yet at this point, and they can't be targeting players at this point other than players that have already played with them. Um, Mark, that's a really good question. I guess we're finding out now. Were they really fans of RGV, or were they Dynamo fans that actually just happened to live in the Valley? I'd love to find out the answer to that question, and I think we will this year. I think it'll become abundantly clear. Oh, that's even better. Fans of Liga MX. Yeah, Harry, that's absolutely right. Obviously, the Valley, huge Liga MX followings there. Monterey, Tigres, Pachuca, yeah, Pumas, other teams as well. Club Tijuana. Miguel Herrera is available. I mean, look, hey, better than Wilmer Cabrera in my opinion, at least, and definitely a coach that the fan base down there would get excited about. I'll be totally honest with you. Parks Undone says, I do feel bad for the supporters in Brownsville, Hidalgo, and other areas, towns in that area. I agree with you. I think they've gotten the short end of the stick for so long, and then their organization finally getting that independence and then getting a little bit of excitement around that, and then basically nothing after that for, what are we at, 8 weeks now? Okay, it hasn't been that long, but it sure as hell feels like it. I think that's a huge overestimation of the Dynamo reach, if that's an idea of the people going to those games. No, I think that's fair, Kenny. And Harry says RGV's on the clock because USL announced May 1st is the starting time. Speaking of, I'm glad you brought that up, Harry. So USL Championship is slated to start May 1st. Hey, thanks for following, Waco. Appreciate it. So USL Championship starts May 1st, and they are officially starting May 1st. MLS released earlier this week that they are going to start preseason February 22nd, and they're going to start the season April 3rd. But before you get your hopes up, before you go mark down the schedule, it also came out today, and I've said this for a while as well. I've said this for the last 2 weeks. There is no CBA currently agreed to. There is no agreement in place between MLS and MLS Players Association, and it looks increasingly likely. In fact, it came out today via The Athletic that MLS released a memo via Don Garber to teams to start preparing for the very strong possibility of a work stoppage. That's huge. I don't know. I mean, look, MLS is going to survive it. There's no doubt about that. But they can't afford for it to go on for too long. And I suspect we see the owners cave a lot sooner than we do the players, because the players have all the leverage right now. They're basically being handed a really shitty situation, and the owners are trying to make it worse. The CBA that was in agreement would have started last season, and it would have included last season in gradual increases in spending and gradual increases in salary caps and the minimum salaries. And instead, MLS came back and said, no, we want to pay you what we paid you in 2019, 2 years later. and we want to keep the same thing in place for another 2 years after that, all the way through 2023. And the problem with that is that MLS just agreed to this new CBA for 2020. They agreed to that CBA right before the 2020 season kicked off, and Garber's out there, shouting from the rooftops that we've lost $1 billion in revenue. Well, that's great, but I think to Stam Stejskel's point, from The Athletic, he wrote an article about it this week. It came out, I think, Monday. To his point, you could sit there and shout that actually, I think it came out Tuesday. You could shout that from the rooftops, but if we go look at the actual valuations of these owners across MLS, more of them gained value during COVID than lost value during COVID. Yeah, but they had to. The force majeure was necessary. It was not necessary for MLS to invoke it. It was horrible for MLS to invoke it. And in fact, it says a lot about MLS's plans. MLS are trying to push are trying to push that they're losing enough money that it doesn't make sense for them to keep the same CBA the way it was. They need to push it back a few years. What they're really trying to do, and Harry kind of pointed to the new TV deal, there's broadcast rights that come up for renewal in 2024, effectively, or is it 2022 or 2024? Kenny will know the answer to that question. And so I'm very certain that the reason they're pushing back as far as they are on trying to inject all this extra money is because they want to get that broadcast money in first, and they want to control it. They don't want to give the players an opportunity to really negotiate for that. And right now, they are locking the players out of having any chance to negotiate for any of that money around that time. So it's after the 2022 season. Yeah, and MLS wants to carry it through the 2023 season. MLS is basically saying, we lost $1 billion. We know we're probably going to lose a little bit more money this particular season. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to basically absorb $20 million per season. $20 million. They've lost $1 billion. They're going to absorb $20 million based on the salary differences from 2021 and 2022 and even 2023. And we're going to push the new CBA to not start until 2024. So we're going to absorb $20 million per year for 4 years, $80 million total, in exchange for hundreds of millions, if not closer to $1 billion, if not billions, of dollars of revenue from a broadcast deal that the players will have no chance to reap the benefits of. This is ownership across the league trying to push this narrative that we're in such dire straits as owners, as multi-millionaires, and in some cases billionaires with Arthur Blank, that we can't afford to go ahead and spend that $20 million extra per year. And again, even to Harry's point, this is a World Cup TV contract too, because 2026 is 4 years after the new deal should technically start. 23 years after the new deal should start. Yes, MLS is still very much linked directly at the hip with SUM, and that tells you everything you need to know. For those that don't know about SUM is basically the equivalent of the financier of MLS as a single entity league, and very much a financier of USSF. Every MLS team, the expansion fees that MLS teams pay to get into the league now, the 300 million, 400 millions, look, that's not just to have their team in MLS. It's so that the ownership group that they're bringing in that's going to be part of that team can have a piece of that SUM pie. Because SUM makes an absolute atrocious amount of money on those damn broadcast rights. And it's a shame because none of that money goes back to the players. That is the travesty in all of this. Look, the players shouldn't have had the force majeure added in June when they had to kind of agree to it. But on the flip side of that, Harry, they were in a situation where they were away from families for how long? They were away from their families. They were, taking part in that stupid preseason, I call it stupid, in MLS's back tournament. They were just trying to get the season underway. And I guarantee you that Don Garber and his legal team were pushing the idea that, hey, guys, we're only including this in the event that revenue is a complete trash dump. We don't have enough to cover salaries. It's the only reason it's here. It's here in case, we can't recover any of the loss. And the players said, look, in good faith, we're going to give you this opportunity to have this in there, this language in there. You're absolutely right. 100%. That's exactly how it is. The players agreed to it because they were looking at the short term. MLS owners were looking at the long term. Look, MLS owners had a good idea come June that this COVID lockout thing was not just going to go away overnight. It had been here for 4 or 5, 6 months at that point. It wasn't just going to disappear, and they knew it was going to affect games in 2021, regardless of what they wanted to say. They knew there was a very high likelihood that 2021 season was going to be, if not delayed, at least going to be very minimal fan attendance for at least the first good portion of it, even if a vaccine came out. Look, they weighed all of these things in that process, and the players didn't, because the players, they didn't. I don't think the players really understood what was at stake. And to the players' credit, look, they've gone on record and they've said MLS pushed this through in a way that we didn't even get a chance to review it. Players were basically handed this in terms from their representatives of the Players Association, while players were not even in the states for the most part, and told just sign it and just agree to it so we can start the season. That's exactly how this all went down. Look, the owners know exactly what they're doing. It is what it is. It's Harry, some is evil for non-MLS fans. Yeah. And Kenny notes it's worth noting that some didn't have any money to make off of summer friendlies, Leagues Cup, or World Cup qualifier games. Not to cry poor for the owner, but it is something to consider. Sure, they didn't, but and I think that's probably where that 1 billion evaluation that Don Garber says in terms of losing revenue for the league comes from. But that shouldn't be counted in terms of the MLS CBA. It shouldn't, because some is not part of MLS. It's part and parcel, but it is not part of MLS. Some's failure to protect themselves or to figure out a way to make those things happen in spite of what was going on is kind of their own fault. And it is as much the league trying to cover their butts from an ownership perspective and trying not to lower the valuations of their teams as it is anything else. MLS knows they've got two teams that are currently essentially for sale in RSL and Houston. And MLS knows that they need to get these two franchises sold. There's very likely going to be a third one in the very near future, maybe even a fourth one. And they know they need those valuations to be as high as possible to bring in ownership that's going to continue to invest in the league. If valuations start to tank, your quality of ownership goes significantly down. And we don't want to see look, we could end up with an owner that's worse than Brenner, that has fewer dollars to spend. And to Mark's point, look, valuations for MLS teams right now are extremely off kilter. MLS teams are valued more than some Premier League teams, and that's absurd to me. And a lot of that has to do with the market share of some, because that is tied to being an owner in MLS. So to Harry's question, do you think RSL heads to Vegas? Have heard rumors that it's being looked at, basically another Austin clause. I kind of do think that's possible, because if you look at what happened with Salt Lake, the Utah Royals moving to Kansas City, I think we could very much see RSL move locations, and I think they could head to Vegas. I think that's a prime location right now, and there's plenty of owners that would love that. And there's no clause that I'm aware of in the RSL stadium deal that says that they can't move the team. And look, that stadium is going to be, it's going to be a U.S. women's and men's national team venue for the next 4 or 5 years until Salt Lake can end up with a MLS club again, or at least a USL championship club. You say that, Mark? They don't lower teams on the lower end of that Premier League spectrum don't get nearly as much as you think. It's really the top 10 to 12 teams that actually walk away with money that's, considering what they spend on players anyways. Harry says MLS wants to get into the betting market, and Vegas is where they need to be. I mean, yeah, it's a clear link, right? It makes it easy. NFL just did it, so why wouldn't MLS consider it as an opportunity? And there's obviously a venue in Vegas right now that's ready for an MLS club to kind of participate, if you will. Again, I guess we'll see what happens. It's another one of those, we get to kind of wait and see how things shake out, but I'm interested. There's a lot of things like that right now that are just super super worth following from a fan standpoint of trying to educate ourselves a little bit. So enough on broadcast rights, enough on the evils that are ownership in MLS, enough on RGV struggles, enough of that stuff. What I want to talk about is the super draft and the week that the Houston Dynamo had this past week. We talked last week about acquiring Tim Parker and what they gave up, and basically in just allocation money and an international slot. We talked about how there were rumors at the time of the Dynamo trade, trying to trade out of the third pick, and I brought it up, and Mark brought it up. What if you can swap that pick for a little bit of money? And then, come on Thursday, the Dynamo did exactly that. They swapped down to sixth, as I mentioned. Or no, it was I think they swapped down to eighth. Someone could correct me in the chat, but they swapped down a few positions, and they still ended up getting the player that they wanted. And they ended up acquiring it starts with a D. Someone in chat remind me who I'm talking about. Who was the player we acquired from Nashville? What's his name? Derek Jones. Thank you. I was like, I knew it started with a D. DJ Derek Jones. Look, he's not a top tier talent. He's not going to be a lights out MLS midfield player, but he's a player Tab's familiar with. He's a player that doesn't take up an international slot. Shut up, Mark. I'm not even gonna give that the visibility it probably deserves, but it was good. But Derek Jones is a player that can help the Dynamo. Look, this season, whenever it begins, whenever it happens, you're going to need depth. You're going to need lots of it. You're going to need players across all positions to be able to step up and play. And Derek Jones is to some degree, at least compared to some of our depth, he's an upgrade. Again, you already brought in Joe Corona, so you've already brought in another central midfielder. And you already had Vera, you already had Seren, you already have potentially Boney on his way back as well, from what I've heard from rumors. Look, and you bring in Derek Jones, you're just solidifying that rotation right there in the middle of the pitch. And Derek Jones is kind of a taller guy. He's a physical presence in that midfielder role, central midfielder role. And what's even better about this is basically we got for $250,000 in allocation money that again we got by simply moving down in the draft. We got a guy that is a replacement, almost a like for like in some ways to Wilfred Zahibo, who was not what the Dynamo were hoping for last season. And it's a guy that doesn't take up an international slot to boot. And it's a guy that Tab has familiarity with on top of that. Perfect opportunity for Derek Jones. He's going to be given the chance to compete. I don't think he plays a defensive mid position. I think he's more likely to play like the true central mid. That kind of six or eight, if you will. The eight. He's going to play that eight role right in the central and midfield, and he's going to be another pivot point. And he's going to be a guy that's expected to help kill off some attacks, but also help get into the offensive third when necessary. And I think he's a player that can do that, especially in Tab's system. He knows what Tab expects of him coming in. I think it's a great landing spot for Derek Jones. And again, the best part about all of it is by moving down, we still got the player we were linked with at number 3. We got him all the way down at number 8. No, it was the 6th pick. We got him all the way down at number 6. So 3 picks later. And we got our central center back, our guy that is going to be given the opportunity to learn under Tim Parker, a guy that many believe is already right at the cusp of being MLS ready. And a guy he's a strong center back. He's a fairly athletic center back, and his passing, his distribution in college was superb, especially the long ball. He can drop that long ball wherever he wants on the pitch, to a winger or to a forward on the run while they're moving. And that ability is something we were missing last year. They were attempting it multiple times. Minor did a decent job with it, every so often, but there were a lot of times those balls just didn't go where they needed to go. And so you bring in a center back in the draft that, again, many analysts consider to be the most MLS ready center back in the draft, and you do it by trading down. You don't even have to stay at the same pick that you had, and you bring in a second player in Derek Jones. This draft felt a lot more similar to the draft night where we picked up AJD and a couple other players as well in the draft, but we picked up AJD during that draft in a trade. And it feels like that. It feels like such a smart move. And there were a ton of analysts that were giving credit to the Dynamo for making the move when they did. And Parts Unknown says Bartlow's ready to start, but I think Minor will get the spot if he comes back. He's back. He's signed. That's done. I think Bartlow will be given the opportunity to compete for that spot in preseason, and that's important because I think Bartlow, his age and his athleticism and his passing are going to put the pressure on Minor. There is no doubt in anybody's mind the amount that the Dynamo spent. They are anticipating and expecting Tim Parker to be that stalwart center back, that Bobby Boswell, if you will, that Eddie Robinson, if you will, that guy that you know is always going to be your starter no matter what. And it's going to be a competition between Bartlow and Minor, and realistically between Fuenmayor, to see which of those three can handle it, and which of those three are ready to start. And in my opinion, I think Bartlow can put enough pressure on Minor that Minor, at the very least, Minor is going to get rest this year. He didn't have hardly any rest last year. And I think that's good. I think Minor is going to want that for sure. But he wasn't the only player we picked up. Bartlow was not. We picked up a guy in the second round I could picture him. Couldn't tell you what his name is. Christopher. I can't remember his last name. Christopher is he is on a Generation Adidas contract. Bartlow's a Gen Adidas player, and that's important because he's basically a free player. He costs us nothing. Generation Adidas contracts are paid for by MLS to get some underclassmen basically into the league. So he was effectively a sophomore. So it's a player who is still fairly young age-wise, which means he's got more miles on those legs left compared to a lot of other players that would come out in the draft. He's a player that is considered to have enough talent as an underclassman to compete in MLS. And I think that's going to push Tab to consider it a possibility. Hey, is this a player that I think could start? And Tab was not hesitant to put young players in last year, especially in preseason and especially those first few weeks of the season. Christopher Strickler. Yeah, thank you. A forward out of Virginia Tech. Which is interesting, right? Because his teammate went to Austin FC, and that was Pereira. Which, by the way, shock of the draft, Austin FC did not take Mayaka, who was the projected number 1 overall pick, the player that every analyst said was the best player in the draft, talent-wise, and projected to be the best player coming out of this draft. And Mayaka ends up going number 3 to Colorado, who, by the way, traded up to get Pereira, but they couldn't get him because he was gone because Austin took him number 1. So a lot of intrigue that happened around the first round of that draft, especially those first few picks. And then at number 57, we did pick up Brandon Turwidge, defender out of SMU. And it's important that Brandon and Christopher haven't signed deals. The benefit with Ethan Bartlow is he's basically already signed a deal with MLS, so he's a guaranteed player. We don't have to sign a contract with him at this point. He's a Dynamo. He is part of the Houston Dynamo organization moving forward. And that's good. It really is. And that's a player that you can count on to at least compete for that center back role. If nothing else, he's going to put a hell of a lot of pressure on Alejandro Fuenmayor this offseason. And if Alejandro can't hack it and he's not up to the challenge, then I don't think Alejandro's long for the Dynamo anymore after that. Like, I think that by the end of the year, if Alejandro hasn't been starting much, he's not going to be with the Dynamo. And I do think the fact he's still here speaks to at least Tab's belief that there's still something more to tap into with Fuenmayor, that he believes that Fuenmayor does still have something to offer, just maybe not quite what they were hoping for when they first signed him. I have talked for a very long time, and my throat is getting dry. My mouth is getting dry. So... Waco, the reason you're getting so damn hype about Ethan Bartlow, first of all, there were a lot of people that, again, had him going number 3 overall in the draft. we were at that spot. That's who everybody expected us to go with, and we were able to trade down and still get him. And we didn't have to go that far to get him. Um, and the reason that everybody's so hyped about Ethan Bartlow, like I said, it comes down to his distribution, man. It is impressive stuff when you watch those highlight videos. The kid's capability to hit that long ball in stride. He can dribble forward. Honestly, he looked a little bit like Kiki in that regards because I thought Kiki did a decent job when he ran forward. But Ethan Bartlow, man, he's the full package when it comes to center back. What we need to see is how he handles MLS level talent and the game speed at the MLS level because it is different. It is a lot faster. But if he can handle it, if he can maintain, if he can be that player that that's capable of stepping up into that MLS level pretty quickly, then we've got our Miles Robinson essentially. Our guy that's going to stick around for 5 or 6 years in my opinion. And can easily be a starter for us the entire time. And even at 6 years, he's only going to be 26. It's a player who you can sell overseas for a good value. Look, this is the first time in a very long time in a draft that we've come out of it, and I've been super excited for every pick that we've made. Brandon Terwich for being out of SMU, he looked good. At SMU. And again, I've said this before. We do have to remember a lot of these players didn't play full seasons. They were playing in the developmental leagues, in amateur leagues because they couldn't sign pro contracts. That would invalidate their NCAA, availability effectively. But again, super exciting draft, and for a team that for the last how many seasons, the draft has not been a priority. It's not been a very exciting time. Even though we've had crappy teams, you'd think we'd be higher in the draft, but we were always on that cusp and always at 8 or 9 or 10, and we just couldn't make it happen. This year, I feel like we finally really truly made it happen, and I feel like Tab went in, and this was reported. I feel like Tab went in with a game plan. He knew how much he valued Ethan Bartlow. He had an idea of what his value on the market would be. He had an idea of what the value of other players in those picks would be. He knew what he wanted, and he knew about when he could get it without having to overpay for it, and he was able to get money in return to do it. And then to be able to turn around in the same draft, get the exact amount of money you need to trade for a player that you also want. I mean, it was a brilliant move. It was a brilliant combination of moves. And some Parts Unknown says some experts gave the Dynamo an A in the draft grades. I haven't seen an A for the Dynamo in the draft in probably a decade, it feels like. I mean, it's been a long time since we've had an A. And here we are. We were basically one of the top 5 teams in the draft in terms of how the draft went based on a lot of experts' opinions. Pat says, yeah, we discussed that in the Discord, talking about the Surge Discord when it happened. Having a coach that knows the MLS intricacies, that's actually spelled correctly. Good job, Pat. Intricacies is a huge thing. Look, Tab has learned that because he didn't know that coming in. He learned it from Pablo Mastroeni last year. He learned it from working with Matt Jordan. As much as everybody gives him lack of credit, he learned it from Matt Jordan. He's done a very good job adapting to MLS at this point, and here's to hoping he continues that trend because there's still some things I think he can do better, and he did learn because he's gone on the record. Tab's been the most transparent coach we've had since Dom. Totally real. He's been the most transparent coach we've had since Dom, and Tab's come in and he's been very clear. He said, "Look, we weren't good enough on the counter in terms of defending." We got caught out a lot of times. I want more athletic guys. If we're going to be pushing up, I need guys that can cover back. There were times that maybe we should have sat back, and I'm evaluating that and figuring out when that needs to happen from an MLS standpoint. We weren't good enough, but I think that we have pieces to be good enough. And look, they've gone out and they've improved the team. They've figured out how to make it better. And I think the Dynamo are poised. Look, I'm not saying that they're MLS championship caliber right now, but you don't have to be to start the season. You don't have to be an MLS Cup contender to start the season. What you have to be is good enough to string wins together every so often. You have to be a team that's competing every match regardless of the competition put before you. You have to be a team that has the talent across the board to sustain over a long period of time, especially if the season has any length of a work stoppage, because they're going to try to still fit in those games once the stoppage is over. And it may only be a month, but that's a month worth of 4, 5, 6 matches that they're going to miss out on. If they end up having a work stoppage, that's 6 additional matches that have to be filled in an already condensed season, a season that's going to be 1 month shorter than 2 years ago. So you're already condensing the season down. There's going to be a ton of midweek matches, guaranteed. And you're going to need players that are able to cycle in and cycle out and not lose a step. And I think Tab is doing a fantastic job with, again, Matt Jordan by his side, making the right moves, picking the right players. Now, look, I said this last year because we did a good job bringing in Zahibo in the middle of the season. We brought in some other players that I thought would have more of an impact than they did. Look, there's every chance that Derek Jones is a total bust. There's every chance that Ethan Bartlow isn't what we hope he's going to be. There's every chance that Fafa Pico is over his prime and he's done. There's every chance that Maximiliano Arudi is not the same player he was. There's every chance that Tim Parker is not going to be the same player he was. But you don't make that many moves without at least hitting on 1 or 2 of them. And if we hit on 1 or 2 of those moves, and God willing, at least one of them will be Tim Parker, then I'm fine. This team is going to be an absolute, really good position. The real question I have, and other people have asked this question, is where is the attack coming from? Who's scoring your goals? Right now, Maxi Urruti is not your guy scoring your goals. At least not as a starter. He might start. I don't project him starting. Christian Ramirez, we saw it last season. Look, he's got all the talent. He's got the capability. But he's not going to be the guy that's going to drop those balls in the back of the net. He's just not. He didn't do it last season. He's not going to do it this season. And I love Christian. I think he's amazing. But it just points out the number one issue we have is who is scoring the goals. Can Ariel Lassiter find that form that he had with Elise, with a little bit more time with Quintero and with other players out wide, Fafa Pico maybe? There's plenty of options, but is there your one true guy that can take over a game when it counts, take over a match when it counts? Do we have a guy that can step up for a free kick besides Quintero? Do we have a guy that can, be a bully in the box? Maxi can do that. Rudy can do that if given the chance, if in the right position, in the right system. Look, we've got pieces, and now we need to see Tab arrange those pieces in a way that forms the full puzzle, that connects the dots, connects the puzzle, and turns it into the full picture that he's kind of shared that he wants to see. And there's no doubt that he understands how to make an attack work and how to be very high intensity. Now we just need to see if the players can step up and maintain it for a full season. If they can, look, this team's going to be very, very good. If they can't, and we start to see those same struggles where the team just gets really exhausted midway through the season, it's going to be tough. So Parts Unknown says, I believe they could be a 7th to 9th seed in the playoffs. I think they could go as high as 5th. I think there's opportunities there. Look, teams are going to have injuries. Teams are going to lose a star player here or there. The Dynamo absolutely could be one of those teams because they're not relying on any one player except for Quintero. They're not relying on any one player. I think they absolutely can be one of those teams that survive the season better than others. And yeah, it's the top 10 last year from the East and the top 8 from the West, if I remember correctly. That made the playoffs. So Pat also said, yeah, that was a huge unknown and why I was scared by his signings, knowing TAM, GAM, draft, discovery rights, etc., referring to Tab and the MLS intricacies coming in. And then to Pat's point, as I've said, he and Tab ended up getting the player he wanted while still selling off his draft spot. I mean, yeah, it's incredible. Harry says, for me, I'm looking to see how the Texas MLS teams play. Frisco, Austin, and Houston will be interesting to see how that plays out as a non-fan of all of them. What's up, George? Thanks for joining 6 minutes before the end of my show. I say because Mark's not here this week because he bailed on me like a jerk. Just kidding. Cascadia of the South. I mean, yeah, it's the Texas Triangle, right? I don't know what they're going to call it. There's going to have to be some kind of rivalry competition every year. There's going to be something. And how about Austin? They made a good move in trading, not trading, but in picking a different player than Mayaka. I really believe Pereira was the better talent out of those two. And I think he fits their system better. I mean, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's just because Mark's not here this week. Although he's still technically in chat. He's hanging out. He knows. Uh, and to Kenny's point, yeah, no cannon for Austin. There's El Capitan is a Frisco Houston rivalry thing only. The slow cooked brisket derby. Why are you making me hungry, Pat? I don't appreciate that. At 8:30 on a Wednesday night. Um, any last thoughts, guys, before we call the show? It's been a good show. I'm glad you guys have been as active as you have. I appreciate that for sure. I haven't had a chance to tweet out the link to the show, so if you guys could do me a favor, we hope to get the audio up on Anchor in the next couple of days. I hope to be able to edit it quicker this time. That was absolutely my fault last week. I hope to get it up there tomorrow. If it does go up, do me a favor, share that link when it goes out on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter. I know every one of you do already, but just in case, at Gen Orange Radio on Twitter. Uh, and if you can, follow us on Anchor. It's anchor.fm/Gen Orange. And there's a follow option. There's a bookmark option. You can bookmark it like a regular website. And then, of course, we're on Spotify with the audio only podcast as well, and Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. So if you have an Apple phone, an iPhone, you can look us up on Apple Music or iTunes, whatever it is on the iTunes. And if you're on an Android device, you can look us up on the Google Play Podcasts, I think is what it is, or Google Podcasts. And we'll be there. Generation Orange. We're the ones. We're the ones that has the. We're the ones with the black background logo and neon sign look to our logo that says Generation Orange Media for those that can't read it because it's kind of small in the icon size there. But before we close, there was one last thing I wanted to do this week, and really honestly is the main reason I popped a beer this week. This goes out to Russell. Rest in peace, my friend. He was a member of Texan Army, long-standing member for a few years. He unfortunately passed away over the weekend, I believe, on Monday, maybe one of the two. And he was a good guy, and just wanted to give him a moment, so to speak. I just let him know that that we're all thinking of him and his family. And it's never easy to lose someone, and he was someone that a lot of people in Texan Army were close with. He left an indelible mark, and it was non-COVID related for anybody wondering. But yeah, Russell, Russell was a good guy, and sad to see it. He was a young kid, so about my age, really, and unexpected, totally not expected. But rest in peace, my friend. This one's for you, for sure. Uh, we can end right there. Yes, thanks.